Saw dudes, I am making a Gyre video due to viewer request. Like Mesa Prime, she has a very high investment frame and takes quite a bit of resources to get the ball rolling. Gyre's passive makes her the queen of red crits, and while she is intimidating to build and play at first, her recent augments and changes have made her easier to work with. Now she flows through missions with smooth, controlled destruction, a spinning force of electric mayhem befitting the title of Vortengeist. Let's take a look at what makes Gyre click. Let's get started. Before covering the builds, let's go over Gyre's abilities. If you already know how she electrocutes enemies to a crisp, please skip to the build section. Gyre's passive causes her abilities to gain a flat 10% crit chance per active electricity status proc, affecting an individual enemy to deal 2 times critical damage against that enemy. The bonus stacks additively with Cathode Grace, increasing the overall ability critical chance at lower electricity status stack counts. Combined, Gyre's passive and Cathode Grace provide up to 300% ability critical chance. Gyre's abilities can reach orange and red critical multipliers to inflict 3 times and 4 times ability critical damage. From the passive alone, orange crits start at 11 stacks and red crits start at 21 stacks respectively. Helm and subsumed abilities and railjack turret abilities such as Seeker Volley do not benefit from Gyre's passive. Gyre's first ability is Arc Sphere. Casting the ability costs 25 energy and causes Gyre to throw a gyratory sphere in an arcing trajectory toward the aiming reticle. On impact with a surface, entity, or manual reactivation by pressing the ability key again, the Arc Sphere fully deploys to electrocute all enemies within a 4-meter sight detection radius, inflicting 2000 electricity damage with a guaranteed status effect. The deployed arc sphere remains stationary, lasting for 10 seconds. It emits an electric field with a 7-meter sight detection radius, shocking all surviving and new enemies in range to inflict 250 electricity damage per second with a guaranteed status effect. Damage per second inflicted by the electric field is multiplied by 2 if at least 3 enemies are hit inside the initial impact radius. Gyre may only have 3 arc spheres active at once. The deployed arc sphere is not a solid object, so entities and projectiles can phase through it unhindered. Nullifier bubbles will only disable an orb when they cross the gyrating core, not the emanating energy aura. The thrown projectile sphere will bounce off the null bubble on contact. Coil Horizon is Gyre's second ability. Casting the ability causes Gyre to expend 50 energy to deploy a gyratory sphere using an underhanded throw with an arcing trajectory toward the aiming reticle. The Coil Horizon sphere is a physics-based object with a high initial velocity as it rebounds against surfaces and obstacles during its 2-second lifetime. Direct contact inflicts knockdown and 1500 electricity damage per second with a guaranteed status effect. Upon reaching the end of its lifetime, or when manually triggered by pressing the ability key again, Coil Horizon detonates itself in an electromagnetic implosion spanning a 12-meter radius that lingers for 2 seconds. Enemies in the sight detection range are dealt 1250 electrical damage with a guaranteed status effect. Affected enemies and any enemies that subsequently enter the implosion radius are rapidly pulled into its center in a ragdoll state. The damage from the implosion diminishes with distance from the center. It can be recast while active to detonate the sphere or throw a new sphere while an implosion vortex exists. The implosion can damage and break destructible objects, bypassing line of sight restrictions in its range. Any pickups that spawn from enemies killed and destructible objects broken by Coil Horizon are vacuumed to the center of the implosion. Regular items left on the ground are unaffected by the suction. Gyre's third ability is Cathode Grace, where she uses 75 energy to surge a potent electric current through herself as gyro blocks envelop her forearms. Cathode Grace grants Gyre a 50% critical chance bonus to her weapons and abilities, as she constantly recharges 1.5 energy points per second, lasting for an initial duration of 8 seconds. For each enemy killed directly by Gyre, or destroyed by any source while affected by a status effect inflicted by Gyre, Cathode Grace's remaining duration is extended by 3 seconds, up to a maximum duration of 60 seconds. In addition to the energy cost requirement, casting the ability triggers a 60-second cooldown before the subsequent activation is allowed. Critical chance bonus for weapons is additive to the bonus for mods such as Point Strike, Pistol Gambit, and True Steel. Critical chance bonus for Gyre's abilities is a percentage point increase. The bonus is additive to Gyre's passive. Casting an ability will stop the energy regeneration for 1 second. The ability's cooldown starts immediately when Cathode Grace's duration timer begins to count down. Kills made while manning a railjack turret, whether the direct fire or abilities such as the Shatter Burst, also extend the duration of Cathode Grace. When the ability is cancelled by falling out of bounds, it takes the highest duration it gained from kills or assists and subtracts it from the cooldown. Lastly, we have Gyre's final ability, Rotor Swell. The ability costs 100 energy to cast, and causes her to overcharge her coil gown as its rotors gyrate rapidly and conductive plating lift apart, granting her 1.5 times movement speed lasting for 22 seconds. A sustained radial electrical surge within a ring of gyral blocks surrounds Gyre, shocking all enemies within a 4-meter sight detection radius around her to inflict 250 electricity damage per second with a guaranteed stats effect. While active, inflicting a critical hit from Gyre's weapons or abilities against an enemy target triggers a lightning discharge that chains outwards, striking the target plus up to 5 other enemies within a 10-meter sight detection radius around the source enemy. The source enemy and chained enemies are inflicted with 500 electricity damage, accompanied by a guaranteed stats effect. Up to 2 lightning discharges from 2 separate critical hits can occur simultaneously. After discharging, Rotor Swell undergoes a 1-second cooldown before it can create discharges again. Discharge damage is independent of the used weapon's damage. The ability can be recast while active to briefly cancel the ability, then renew into a new instance with full duration. In landscapes, deploying and riding an Arcwing or K-Drive while Rotor Swell is active will retain the gyrating transmitters and continue to cause damage. This is also true when casting Rotor Swell before getting off a railjack to fly via Arcwing, giving an additional damaging source while engaging enemy craft in melee. Now let's cover the game loop. First, you want to start missions by finding a group of enemies and casting Cathode Grace. Be sure to cast the ability from a safe position since enemies will burst you down during the casting animation. As soon as the casting animation ends, start killing enemies to increase its duration. During the next few seconds, you want to accumulate enough energy to cast Rotor Swell. Cast Rotor Swell as soon as possible, use Coil Horizon to group enemies for easy killing, and use Arc Sphere to kill rank and final enemies. All the builds today will use the Augment Cathode Current, which causes kills to refresh Rotor Swell's duration on kill similar to Cathode Grace's. This eliminates the need to recast Rotor Swell. Due to this, the rest of the energy should be spent spamming either Arc Sphere, Coil Horizon, or the Subsumed Helmet ability. As Gyre, the goal is to kill as much as possible, as soon as possible. Rinse and repeat. This Gyre video features 4 unique loadouts with their respective helmet setups and alterations. For the highest amount of build flexibility, I recommend using 3 Omniforma, especially if you consider maining the frame. Use 1 in the Aura slot, 1 in the Exila slot, and 1 in the main build section for the best amount of flexibility. The first build is a non-helmet setup focused on shield gating, energy economy, and high ability uptime. It performs well in Steel Path missions and can comfortably hold up to around level 800 to 1000 with proper awareness. Beyond that, I'd recommend transitioning into a more specialized or helmet integrated setup. For the Aura, we're using Brief Respite. This mod is core to shield gating builds, converting energy spent on abilities into shields. It allows you to reset your shield gate consistently, provided you're casting regularly and have enough energy to support the loop. In the Exila slot, we slotted Cunning Drift. While often associated with increasing slide distance and speed, the more significant benefit here is the slight boost to ability range, which enhances the effective range of Arc Sphere, Coil Horizon, and Rotor Swell, thereby improving crowd control coverage. The mobility bonus is also a notable quality of life improvement, allowing for easier maneuvering through dense tile sets or quick repositioning in combat. Blind Rage adds a significant boost to ability strength at the cost of efficiency. While this does increase the energy cost of abilities, we mitigate this downside with Cathode Grace's energy regeneration. The extra strength helps you meet thresholds for stronger damage or buff effects. Overextended and Archon Stretch form the backbone of our ability range scaling. Overextended comes with a strength penalty, but the massive range increase is well worth the trade-off in a build focused on crowd control and status application. Archon Stretch not only boosts range, but also regenerates 2 energy per second for 5 seconds when you hit an enemy with an electricity status effect via abilities. Gyre applies electricity to enemies so much that this is a no-brainer. Prime Flow increases the energy pool significantly, giving us more leeway between energy pickups and letting us cast abilities more freely. It also synergizes well with shield gating since you'll often want to cast abilities to keep shields up. Rolling Guard is our defensive cornerstone. The brief window of invulnerability and status cleanse lets you survive dangerous situations and re-engage safely. It's especially important when shield gating fails or if you're hit by an unavoidable status effect like Toxin. Equilibrium offers amazing energy sustain by converting health orbs into energy and vice versa. Paired with a companion that can generate health orbs like one using Synth Deconstruct, it becomes a passive way to keep your energy pool topped off throughout missions. This is a backup for Cathode Grace, just in case we get hit with a magnetic proc. Conductive Sphere causes projectiles that travel through Arc Sphere to inflict electricity damage and a guaranteed status effect. This is an insane bonus to outgoing damage and turns weapons into damage over time monsters. It is a buff that is very easy to activate and works in all levels of play. Cathode Current is an augment mod for Cathode Grace that causes enemies killed to release an additional discharge from Rotor Swell and extend its duration. The bonuses from this mod are, unfortunately, not affected by mods. However, that does not matter a whole lot since it eliminates the need to recast Rotor Swell, assuming that Gyre is getting enough kills. The only alteration to the non-helmet build is swapping Prime Flow for Transient Fortitude. This reduces energy reserves to 240 and will make spam casting abilities a bit harder if it's mindless. However, the increase in ability strength will also increase the energy regenerate for Cathode Grace, meaning that calculated casts of Arc Sphere and Coil Horizon will hit harder. Additionally, the damage of Rotor Swell will be massively increased, allowing the build to scale into harder content without much hassle. However, even with the increase in ability strength, a helmet build is highly recommended. The second build marks the start of the helmet setups, and subsumes Pillage over Arcsphere, and focuses on ability DPS and grouping crowd control. Ironically, this second build is the same as a second non-helmet setup with just one change. The only difference between this build and the last is the augment mod, which is Coil Recharge. Coil Recharge is an augment for Coil Horizon that allows Gyratory Sphere to be recalled on recast without detonating it, while discharging additional electricity damage that chains to other enemies. Upon holding the ability button, the sphere will detonate as normal, and enemies that are pulled in from the detonation will receive additional discharges. The Gyratory Sphere discharges every 4 seconds. Every 15 meters travel, the sphere will discharge to an additional enemy and reduce the discharge timer by 0.25 seconds down to a minimum of 0.25 seconds at 225 meters. Critical hits from Coil Recharge's discharge will trigger Rotor Swell's discharge, further increasing damage output. On recall, the Gyratory Sphere will sling itself towards Gyre's current position, stopping in front of her. The sphere can be hit with melee attacks to fling it in the reticle's direction. This build is super nice for mobile defense missions since it locks enemies down and applies more than enough damage. However, you will be losing out on some weapon DPS since Conductive Sphere is no longer in the picture. The third setup also uses Pillage, but this time it is subsumed over Coil Horizon. Instead of focusing on ability DPS, this build brings back the weapon platform focus from Conductive Sphere, allowing for force procs of electricity. Most of the build has the same basis. Brief Respite takes up the aura slot for shield gating and is perfect given the negative efficiency provided by Blind Rage. Power Drift takes up the exile slot this time, increasing ability strength and offers a chance to prevent knockdowns. The extra strength increases the damage of Conductive Sphere's buff, which is great for weapon DPS. Blind Rage and Umbral Intensify handle the ability strength portion of the build. Archon Stretch increases range, and the energy passive helps offset the expensive ability casts. Prime Continuity increases the duration of Arc Sphere, Cathode Grace, and Rotor Swell, and allows the Pillage cast to have a higher effective range. Rolling Guard offers iframes and a status cleanse in a pinch, and Prime Flow increases energy reserves. Please use the max version of Prime Flow. My build does not have it due to polarization issues. Conductive Sphere turns Gyre into a weapons platform, and Cathode Current negates the need to recast Rotor Swell, assuming you can get a high enough KPM. The only alteration to the Pillage setup is by changing Blind Rage to Transient Fortitude and Prime Flow to Equilibrium. This setup is a lot more spam friendly, but it has reduced damage, floor, and ceiling. However, given how easy it is to spam Pillage for shield gating and defense trip, this trade-off can be worth it for some players. The hit to ability duration from Transient Fortitude isn't a massive issue, since we have a net gain from Prime Continuity. Equilibrium helps pad out any energy issues and picks up the slack where Cathode Grace may fall short. Please use a max copy of Equilibrium. I just had polarity issues. The next setup is suited for level cap content and uses Nourish over Coil Horizon. This allows Gyre to multiply the energy regeneration from Cathode Grace, reducing energy strain in hard missions. It also allows us to drop Equilibrium for better survivability. Brief Respite offers shield gating, which is perfect when paired with catalyzing shields. Power Drift helps increase the ability strength and offers a chance to prevent knockdowns. Blind Rage is the only ability strength mod we need for the build and offsets the negative strength applied by Overextended. The range bonus from Overextended and Archon Stretch is nice for Rotor Swell and Arc Sphere, making it easier to nuke. Prime Continuity increases ability duration for better quality of life. Rolling Guard offers iframes in a pinch and grants status cleansing. Catalyzing Shields works in tandem with Brief Respite for on-demand invulnerability if our shields break. Conductive Sphere allows us to fry enemies with weapons, pairing perfectly with Nourish, and Cathode Current reduces the amount of times needed to recast Rotor Swell drastically. The only alteration that could be made to the build is swapping Overextended for Prime Flow and possibly Power Drift for Cunning Drift if you desire more range. Dropping Overextended increases ability strength at the cost of range. However, if you are a trigger-happy maniac, it won't make a super massive difference. The extra bump in strength could give you lower time to kill and higher KPM, which is essential in level cap environments. I will also take this time to recommend Roar over Coil Horizon. While you would miss out on the energy multiplier benefits of Nourish, you could easily make do with Cathode Grace, Archon Stretch, and Energy Orbs alone. Nourish does offer viral damage and status application, but that can be done with companions and weapons. Roar's buff is double dipped in the damage calculations for electricity procs, which can lead to a higher damage ceiling. Of course, this comes at the risk of better energy management. If you are having energy issues, consider staying with Nourish or using Equilibrium or a Violet Archon Shard. Now, let's cover some of Gyre's arcane options. Gyre heavily relies on her abilities and shields to stay alive, making shield regen, energy economy, and ability strength a high priority. As such, the preferred arcanes are Arcane Aegis, Arcane Steadfast, and Molt Augmented. Arcane Aegis is perfect for a glass cannon like Gyre. Unlike Saren Prime, Gyre has no quick casting, hands-free ability to immediately regenerate her shield gate. This makes Arcane Aegis a perfect stand-in. While it can't always be active, since it is based on probability, it can make the difference between life and death when using other means of shield gating like Pillage, Brief Respite, or Augur mods. Arcane Steadfast is great when shield gating is not an issue. This can be true for builds using Brief Respite or Pillage with Blind Rage. The biggest problem with these builds is their energy consumption, which constantly teeters on the edge of complete depletion. Even with Cathode Grace supplying energy, it may not be enough for constant Thunderous Strike or Pillage casts if you choose to use an alternative Helmet ability. Arcane Steadfast can alleviate this issue, without going overboard in cost or energy return like Arcane Energize. If your only concern is giving enemies the electric chair, then Multi Augmented is the best option for you. This Arcane increases the energy regen provided by Cathode Grace, the discharge damage from Rotor Swell, and the electricity damage provided by Conductive Sphere. However, this may not be the best option in environments that necessitate extra survivability. There is no best combination of Arcanes on Gyre. A lot comes down to preference. If energy issues are your biggest gripe, take Arcane Steadfast. If surviving hits is a hassle, Arcane Aegis is the way to go. For ability damage, use Multi Augmented. As always, weapon-specific Arcanes are also suitable depending on your loadout. For endgame content, I recommend you using Madurai as the primary focus school. Power Transfer is great for reducing the casting time of Helmet abilities, and more importantly, it drastically speeds up Coil Horizon, Cathode Grace, and Rotor Swell activation. This helps keep Gyre's fluid combat style uninterrupted. With Arcsphere also having a short cast animation, reducing downtime between casts lets you maintain momentum and quickly cycle through enemies. Sling Strength increases ability strength by 40% after 2 consecutive Void Slings. For Gyre, this is extremely useful since the Cathode Grace's critical chance scales off of ability strength. It also boosts the damage of Arcsphere, which benefits from both the initial hit and the lingering damage field. This makes Sling Strength a high value perk, especially in high level content where every extra bit of strength helps you chain kills and maintain uptime on buffs. Void Strike and Void Fuel don't directly enhance Gyre's kit, but they can significantly boost the performance of her weapons, especially if you run a primer or stat stick secondary. Void Strike adds a massive weapon damage buff, while Void Fuel boosts ammo efficiency by 40% during Void Strike. These tools are most valuable when you're out of energy or waiting on Cathode Grace cooldowns, giving you a powerful backup option to clear enemies and regenerate energy or pickups. Phoenix Talent is excellent for Gyre as it provides a flat 30% boost to all physical damage, which will mainly affect the damage of her equipped weapons. While much of Gyre's kill power comes from her crit scaling, electricity status application, and ability damage, this constant boost to base physical damage helps polish off tougher enemies faster, and it's always active, with no setup needed. I will also mention that while Madurai is helpful for most missions, especially Void Cascade, Zeneric is also a nice option. If you are having energy issues and just don't want to use Arcane Energize, Zeneric could be a great casual option. As for Archon shards, this is what I recommend for a general setup. Gyre tends to lean into her ability damage since Rotor Swell can create massive discharges. Having one Talforge Amber shard is great for Gyre, since her casting animations are long and are a point of vulnerability. Cutting down the casting times for Rotor Swell and Cathode Grace is essential to staying alive, even if recasting is rare. The 4 Talforge Violet shards increase ability damage against enemies affected by electricity status by 60%. It makes sense given Gyre's guaranteed electric status effects inflicted on enemies. These shards drastically increase the damage caused by Rotor Swell discharges and Arcsphere. If you don't want to use Violet shards, focus on Crimson or Azure shards. The Crimson shards can be attuned for ability strength or duration depending on your preferences. The Azure shards can be attuned for maximum energy, which can replace Prime Flow in some builds if you want more modding flexibility. To top things off, let's cover Gyre's weapon choices. Gyre is a pseudo-weapon platform and caster frame, making weapon choice an important part of her overall performance. From testing, the weapons that performed the best were those with moderate to high fire rate and that could affect a couple of enemies at the very least. For primaries, I suggest using the Strun Prime Incarnon, Tenet Galaxian, and Torrid Incarnon. Strun Prime's Incarnon form is essentially an AoE grenade launcher, which covers a large area and makes Rotor Swell discharges super easy to proc. The same can be said for Tenet Galaxian and Torrid Incarnon. Tenet Galaxian is great for providing an extra source of energy via Photon Overcharge, and Torrid Incarnon wipes the floor with everything thanks to its overwhelming damage. Plus, they're both chain beams, which makes Rotor Swell discharges very common. For secondaries, I like using Epitaph Prime and Kuva Nukor. Epitaph Prime is a great primer weapon and is hard to beat. It can deal a good chunk of damage when charged and can be a single target weapon for HVTs if you choose to mod it as one. Kuva Nukor is a great weapon to pair with Gyre thanks to its high critical multiplier. While it does suffer from a low crit chance, that gets fixed thanks to her Cathode Grace and secondary Enervate. With Conductive Sphere, it becomes an even hotter microwave. Finally, the melee options are Inodem, Okina Prime Incarnon, and Praetos. These 3 melee weapons all increase mobility in some way. Inodem comes with the perk Striking Swiftness for bonus sprint speed, Okina Prime Incarnon comes with Swordsman Celerity for bonus movement speed, and Praetos has Drifting Grace and Evolved Ascension for sprint speed, slide, and parkour velocity. Gyre wants to be all over the map, so these 3 weapons are great options. And that's it for the video. Gyre brings a lot to the table. Rapid scaling, strong crowd control, and some of the highest crit potential in the game when built right. Can I recommend Gyre? Yes, but with some clear caveats. She is a high investment frame. She needs solid modding, proper setup, and constant upkeep to really shine. Her damage loop relies heavily on kills and staying in motion, so if the flow breaks, her performance drops fast. But when everything aligns, she's one of the strongest ability damage dealers available. She's not plug and play similar to Mesa Prime. You'll need arcanes, proper stat distribution, and ideally a good set of Archon shards and high enemy density to keep her going. But if you're willing to put in the resources, Gyre pays off with massive, consistent AoE damage and top tier clear speed. So yes, Gyre is worth it, but just be ready to commit. She demands a lot, but delivers even more. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any suggestions or thoughts, leave them in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching, and happy farming. Stay safe.